given that we have this technology, how accessible is it, for farmers, and what's really the investment, to get these tags and put it?
Oh, it's very cheap. When we designed the system, we said, my thinking and my thoughts are that 95% of the cattle on the African continent are in the hand of smallholder farmers. And it's especially more so when you go north of us. Very few large commercial farms. It's just, smallholder farmers. When I say smallholder, that's just a description of them. They might be in possession of 400 or 500 cattle, but they're not using them commercially. They're just things that they have. And so we worked on a system that these guys are not commercially utilizing their cattle. They're just there because they want to have cattle and they're their property. And so we said, we've got to make it cheap enough for the farmer to want to join the system. And so we worked on, and I'll give you a number now, an animal lifespan of 8 years will cost you $10 to be in the system. And that $10 consists of $2 on day one for the tag and registration, and another dollar for the annual subscription. And then every year you keep on subscribing. So that's basically $10 in the life of an animal. If you only have the animal for 2 years, it's $4. That's the $3 in year one, and then $1 a year from year two onward. So we've kept it cheap on that basis. We do have scanners to scan the tags. Those scanners are very expensive, and I'm going to tell you right now, anybody with less than 100 cattle, I wouldn't recommend you buying a scanner, because you can manually input the information using your phone, because it allows you to, instead of scanning the tag number, it allows you to manually put the tag number in. And we've got an executive at an insurance company that we're talking about at the moment, and he's got 24 cattle, and he's got an Excel spreadsheet, and he goes to his farm on the weekend, and he's got the tag numbers, and as it goes through to go into the dip, he ticks. If he's injecting them, he ticks against each tag number he does, and then he comes and sits down afterwards at his dip tank or in his house on his farm, and he punches in what he's done to his cattle. And, so for him, he's paying $10 over 8 years of the life of a cattle per animal, for an animal that he could end up selling for $600-700. It's a fraction of what the animal's worth. But then the other thing we found is that as you start coming into these sorts of systems, the value of your animals increases, because there's now a logbook. It's like a car. If you can't tell me where your car has been, and it's a 10-year-old car, I'm going to bargain for the lowest possible price, and you're going to struggle to bring me up. Whereas if you can say to me, this is the car, here are the service records, it's this, it's that, it's clean, it's everything, okay? The stuff which I can't visually see, you can show me on a piece of paper or a computer module, then I'll give you more money. So you will more than recover, I believe personally, the $10 investment you've made in each animal over the last 8 years.
Right. I take it then, are farmers beating, the step to your doorstep, to actually get this technology across Zimbabwe and Africa?
Not necessarily, because we haven't done a lot of marketing on the system. We've currently got 8,500 cattle in the system. There'll be another 5,000 going in with the insurance company very soon, and then with those 5,000, that'll add another, through the ownership project that we're doing with them, we'll add another 30,000 cattle. And I believe it's one of the principles of seeing is believing. It's all very well me telling you that I've got something very nice for you, but if you can't see it happening, it's a bit difficult. So our policy has been, pick a few communities, give them the tags, show people what's going on, and then create a mushroom effect where the people around them say, what's going on over there? How come they've got this? Oh, why is this? And then they build in. But ultimately, what we're also trying to do, and here's a little known fact, is that for us to export to the EU and the UK, we have to have a traceability system. And so don't let anybody tell you that we're going to export. Without a traceability system, we're not exporting. Because there's all sorts of things through the World Animal Health Organization. There are all these things which have to be in place, and traceability is one of them. And the sad thing is, Zimbabwe is one of 4 African countries that has duty and tariff-free exports of beef to the UK and Europe at law in Brussels and London. So it's not something which, you know, if the government says we want to export 10,000 kgs of beef to the UK, they can export them to the UK as long as they follow the conditions of cleanliness and what have you, veterinary reports. We can export duty and tariff free, something which gives us an incredible advantage over the big exporters at the moment. We can also use traceability in areas with this foot and mouth. Perfect example is India is riddled with foot and mouth. But India is one of the largest exporters of meat on the planet because they've created compartments. And the competent authority for compartmentalization is the vet department. So the vet department can go around locally and say, that's a compartment, that's a compartment. And any animal from that farm, as long as it's got traceability, got a traceability system, its meat can be exported to Europe tomorrow. So it's in our interest as a country to do that. But I think also, I don't like forcing things on people. I'm not one of those people who will force you. I'll say, there it is. If you want it, take it. If you don't, don't. We've had a lot of interest in the Horn of Africa, talking to them, where there are lots of cattle, much more cattle than we have in this country. Our neighbors, we've been talking to both donor communities and governments of our neighbors. So there is a lot of interest, and it is going to roll out. But as I said, the system is there, it's available, and in Zimbabwe, you can put it on your cattle tomorrow. Wait, if you come to me for the tag, I'll give it to you today, and you can tag your cattle today, and you can get into the system. Just one thing about the system I just need to mention is you have an administrator of the system, and that administrator has a web portal. And the web portal now enables them to, on the internet, see their cattle, click on an individual, see its details, see when dipping was last done, knowing how many dip tanks there are. Stock count is a very interesting one for urban-based farmers. Sorry, excuse me, please.
Okay.
Tell this person I'll pull them back. For urban people, so you could be a busy executive in Harare and your cattle are in Bulawayo, and your cattle are in, let's use Bulawayo, they're in Gwanda. And you've got someone, a farm manager on the farm doing the work. What you can do is you can say, every night I want you to do a stock count. And all the stock count consists of, you must have a scan, otherwise difficult task. You scan the animals as they're running into the crawl at night or out in the morning. It takes that detail. You then upload that to the cloud. And then sitting in Harare, or you sitting in Bulawayo, you can go in and say stock count on that herd, and it'll tell you there should have been 200 cattle. It counted 200 cattle, but of the 200 it counted, 10 of them weren't yours. So it'll say these cattle don't belong to the particular herd that was counted. And then it'll give you another report and say, yes, whilst you've got 200 cattle and 200 were counted, these 10 animals of yours were counted. And you can then click on each animal and see the description of the animal, which is good for reporting to police. And it's also good where if you have a situation where you've got unscrupulous workers who are selling cattle, and then when it's time to do stock count, go and borrow cattle from their neighbor who's also got tags, and they bring your cattle, your 10, so the count will be 200. It'll tell you that, this number doesn't belong to you. So yeah, the system can do that. And those are some of the interesting things.
Wow.
Sorry, and I'm all over the place, is the system works on offline. So what happens is you log into the system on your so you can log on, and then it'll ask you to set a PIN number. You set a PIN number. The PIN number resides on the phone. The actual login is with the cloud. But when you're out of network range or Wi-Fi range, you can still be carrying on and doing your things. And then it'll just say events to submit in red. And when you get back into an area of connectivity, be it Wi-Fi or mobile network, you then said submit, and all the information goes up from your phone to the database. Right. So it enables you to be in the middle of nowhere, but still use the functionality of the app.
Right, because also I'm just wondering here that where there could be issue of data, breaches and privacy concerns as well. How would the system keep the farmers and their transaction information, safe while still providing transparency where it matters?
Absolutely brilliant question. When we designed the system, we were fortunate enough to describe it, to define it as a global system. And being a global system, what we've done is we've taken some of the most stringent data protection acts in the world. If you read our privacy policy, it'll mention California, Colorado, GDPR, POPIA, South Africa. So we take all precautions against data breaches. So the first thing is, if you sign up for an account, only you can see that account and what we call a super user. And there are only 2 super users on the planet. Okay, that'll be able to see that your information as an individual farm. A communal farmer is registered through government. And the reason they're registered through government is because government is responsible for dipping their cattle. So government has their details anyway. So the stock card will say name of farmer, ID number, phone number, cattle, whatever. So anyone who's in the communal system whose animals are dipped by government, by law, their details are available to government, but only at vet department. There are only certain people that can see it within the vet department, simply because that's the law. By the same token, with police, if they see a stray animal and they put the tag number into the system, all they will see is your name and your phone number. They will not see your national ID number. They will not see your physical address, again, for data privacy. Because you don't want, a policeman who has a vendetta against someone, or someone who gets access to the police module 3, his policeman friend signs in as using that guy's sign-on credentials, and because he wants to know your address because he knows that's your animal, kind of thing. That information isn't available. If the police then want your full address, they then have to contact livestock and prove at law that they're entitled to that information, and then they'll get it. But otherwise, data privacy is very important. And funnily enough, you mentioned data privacy. It was one of the requirements from Android and Apple. When we were setting up our accounts, we had to have a robust data privacy policy.
Great. Interesting. Given that, are there any plans, on your part to actually integrate with the international databases, for example, to combat, the issue of say cross-border clustering?
Yeah, well, as I said, we're talking to some of our neighbors. So they'll be in the system. I'll just show you now briefly. These are the tags. And I'll show you one tag. So let's get one out. That's a tag, normal air tag. I'll bring it up to the camera so you can see it a bit closer.
Right.
There you go. It's a 15-digit. It's got a QR code. Currently, the QR code is responsible for our website, but the new tags that are coming, the QR code will be the number of the animal, the same as this 15-digit number. And that's because for your smallholder farmer, they'll soon be able to use their phones as the scanning device. So now this guy, it costs $1,000 that I can throw on the floor, it can fall into a dip tank, it's waterproof. For a commercial large farmer, yes, who's got 300-400 cattle coming through, fine. But for a smallholder farmer, they'll now be able to just simply grab their phone, QR code, scan the QR code. When they scan the QR code, that's the number of the animals. They'll be dipping as the animal walks past, scan the QR code with their camera, and that'll make it even cheaper for them.
Right. Okay. And do you see this blockchain system evolving to actually protect other types of livestock and even agriculture, products as well?
Yeah. So yes, this system caters for cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats. But what we've done is we've only activated cattle. We said, let's get it working. Let's get it take off. Let's get it into the marketplace, working perfectly, large numbers in there. Then we'll activate the other types of livestock. We're also looking at fresh produce systems. That's in the pipeline as well. So yeah, there's a lot more we can do. The other thing we're doing, and it's coming January next year, is AI. So because we're gathering data, the intention is we'll be gathering so much data that predictive stuff can start coming through. For example, in an area, if there's foot and mouth on one farm and then it spreads to the next farm, you'll be able to get a notification in your web portal saying, please protect your animals. There might be an outbreak of foot and mouth in the area. So you're not breaching data privacy by saying next door over there has got it. You're saying in the area. The same with other diseases that spread fast. Lumpy skin. You can say, please vaccinate your animals. There is an outbreak of lumpy skin disease within 20 kilometers of you. So you're not breaching the privacy of the farmer who has the lumpy skin. You don't know who he is, but you know that it's in the area, so I better protect my cattle. One of the things. Once you now start assigning mothers to calves over generations, suddenly you can now start seeing a pattern. Oh, this cow produces every second year, or this cow, if the weather, because you're now including weather patterns. If the weather's okay, she's okay. But if the weather goes down, it's too hot, she's not going to cycle when the rains come quickly. That information, it's gathering all this data, and it'll now be able to start giving you predictions of what to expect, predictions of diseases. The main one being disease, which is going to be the best one. And we've entered into partnership with a US university to develop it. And they've got 6 master's students working with us on the process, and it's going to be a game changer. And as I say, at the moment, we're going from conception to death. The next phase is to go from conception to consumption. So we want to cross into the abattoir space. And then, so you can track an animal from birth to death. And, it's about quality of life and things like that. These millennials and Gen Zs, they want to make sure we're not harming the planet. If we can show them these cattle are coming from a good place, you're helping this farmer. And, what ultimately happens is we want a situation where the farmer starts getting a bigger share of the pie. At the moment, you hear horrendous stories of, middlemen coming and buying cattle for $50, putting it on a truck, driving it to an abattoir and getting $500. And all they've done is just pay 50, drive it there and get 500. We want to start breaking that down, because the more price knowledge they have and everything is going to be in the best interests of the abattoir to go and get the cattle themselves, because the farmer's going to increase their prices, and then the middleman's going to have to make some margin, and his margin will include a lot of profit. So, the hope is that, through information and the farmers getting information, you'll find a situation where the farmer will now have price discovery, and you can argue. And if they can organize themselves as a community, they'll say, there's our sale pen, where we'll have cattle there Thursday. Whoever wants to buy, come and buy. And if we don't like your price, we won't sell to you. Very plain.
Because look, I see that you are really economically empowering farmers through the use of this technology. Maybe before I ask you about how to accentuate that, I'm keen to understand how would you like to see, like, governments, maybe the law enforcement agencies, or even the agriculture itself support or work with your platform to maximize impact.
Well, I think what we've done is we've said, look, we understand how Zimbabwe works, and similar in Southern Africa, maybe a few changes here and there. But, we know that an animal can't be exchange ownership, whatever, different places without the vet department. So we built a vet department module into the system. So the government vets and the Director of Veterinary Services populates the list with their email addresses, and then they can now log on and do the movements. The manual movement permit still stays there, but the hope is that as we move along, the government will now turn around and say, why don't we put the movement permits on your system? And then the vet department can do it in the system, because once they're in the system now, we can then do the access to the police now. So if the police are manning a roadblock and they scan one animal on the truck, it'll give them the tag numbers of all the animals that should be on the truck, ID of the driver, where it's coming from, where it's going to. And suddenly now, law enforcement, any animals in trucks can now be saying, press of a button, we know where they're going, why they're going. And if they're on the truck and they're 30 on the truck, but the movement permit says 10, hold on a second. There's 20 animals that shouldn't be here. They can impound them. And, that'll be a great help in stopping diseases. And also with the vet department, they can now look at a lot of their stats on the animals they control, which are the government tanks, and see where are the biggest sales taking place. If we cross over into the beef sector, which animals are giving you the best quality beef? You can now start getting that information, and life really, really will start getting better. And, for me, that's, it'll help the people, it'll help the government. The minister at the touch of a button knows the total number of cattle in Zimbabwe as at any given point. And my assumption is that information will only ever be less than 24 hours old. So I might be in the field doing stuff, get home late at night. I don't upload it because I'm so tired. Wake up in the morning, upload the information. So I'm saying 24 hours old at the most. And can you imagine the minister sitting at, the FAO conference or wherever, SADC conference, and them saying cattle, and him saying, we have so many cattle in the country, so many in this province. Do you want me to break it down to district level? Do you want me to go to ward level? I can tell you. John, do you need to tell you at dip tank level? I can tell you, because he's got the information. Right. And we've also made it such that the cost is borne by the farmer. The farmer has to have skin in the game. No, not this usual donor syndromes and all that, because if the farmer bears the cost, he'll be more accurate with what he does. And then, for the government, it's great because they now have access to a system where they don't have to, it's not costing them money to bring it out.
Right, great. Yeah, that's interesting because there is that economic value that will be derived from integrating the system in the operations. Yeah, maybe to say that you weigh many livestock health is really an understatement. You're founder of the Makera Cattle Company, and you're the resident director, I think, of Shangani Holistic Private Limited, which is a number of about 7,500 cattle under holistic management. And you currently serve as the vice chair of Southern African Regional Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And in fact, you sit on the board of that same body. How can you, and why should farmers really commercialize their operation and benefit from financial inclusion, that the benefits that you bring with this?
Here's the thing. 20% of the world's cattle are on the African continent, and we play no part in beef globally, at a global level. 20%. And when we talk 20%, you need to remember the Indians consider buffalo as cattle as well. But we still have 20%. Ethiopia has the 4th largest cattle population as a country on the planet. But where are we? We're nowhere. Okay? We have quality meat. We have cattle that have grown through thousands of years, are indigenous cattle. In Zimbabwe, you've got the Nguni, you've got the Mashona, you've got the Tuli. You've got these animals that have weathered the storms, that are natural, that survive out there in the middle of Gwanda with no feed, in the middle of a drought. And that animal will get skinny and grow fat again, but it's a hardy animal, okay? We've got genetics. There's a study in Australia as we speak where they've taken some Nguni cattle to Australia, to a university, and they're saying the African Sangha cattle could be the future of the global beef industry. This is the Australians. Do you know there are more registered Tulis in Australia than there are in Zimbabwe? Stud animals. Fact. There are more registered Tulis in South Africa than there are in Zimbabwe. And I think I can say this, but I might be reaching. I think there are more registered stud Tulis in the United States than there are in Zimbabwe. And it's a Zimbabwean animal. So we need to get financial inclusivity. We need people to know that, I'm sitting there with 80 head of cattle. I'm not poor. I can collateralize them. I can grow my maize. I can send my children to school. I can do whatever it is. But these cattle have an economic value, because the more you do that, the less we have to rely on donors. And I say this because I think sometimes, when Trump said that he was stopping US aid, part of me was sad, but part of me was also happy because I said, we really need to get away from this handout syndrome. And what is the best asset we as Africans have? It's our cattle. Every village in this country has cattle. They do. And why don't we use them as economic assets to join the formal sector, payment systems, all of that? If you're working with government, they can come up with novel ways of if people want to talk about taxing it. If you're less than 10 cattle, you don't pay tax on your sales and purchases. If you're between 10 and 20, it's 5%. You can do all those things quite nicely and comfortably. And then your smallholder farmer has his access to his money, and he's not dependent on anyone for his livelihood. And I think, then the donors can maybe go and do other things like, I don't know, build bridges, build schools. I'm not going to prescribe what they should be doing. But what I do believe is that, I'd rather have a man that has been taught to fish than being given fish. And I think that is the important thing. And that's where these systems come into play and help the farmers achieve that. Because, we said we're designing a system that a farmer will benefit from, even if he doesn't use it. So, for example, the veterinary department are the ones doing the dipping and all that for his cattle and putting it into the system, but they're still in his name. And when he goes to sell his animal, the vet can say, these are clean animals, guys. What you're buying is good stuff. I hope you paid a good price for it. He can benefit just by having a tag on the air.
Yeah, I think what you should indeed, you should have the ear of everyone, particularly the farmers and all actually the investors, because of this, the robustness of the system that you have actually established. Well, very interesting, and thank you so much. Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Listeners, I was actually in conversation in today's program with Makuvise, a seasoned cattleman and actually the co-founder of the livestock Global, a startup that uses blockchain technology to help farmers keep track of the health and location of their cattle. Remember, this is Asake Online. You're actually in agriculture on Cite. Remember to follow us on our social media platforms on Cite ZW.